Biden's appearance tonight is the culmination of a week on the world stage for the NATO summit. And while questions swirl about the president's fitness for another term, the New York Times op-ed page is sounding alarms about his Republican opponent under the scathing headline, "Donald Trump is unfit to lead." The New York Times editorial board lashes into former President Trump's character, saying he is, quote, unworthy of the presidency. It goes on to describe a, quote, utter lack of respect for the Constitution, the rule of law, and the American people, adding, Mr. Trump is animated by a thirst for political power to use the levers of government to advance his interests and satisfy his impulses and exact retribution against those he thinks have wronged him, end quote. Now, this is the same group of opinion journalists at the Times that recently urged President Biden and Democrats to have Biden step aside. The board has summed up what many Americans are thinking, that the stakes couldn't be higher, and we don't like either option. For more on all this, let's bring in our Democratic panel. Joining us now, NewsNation contributors and Democratic strategists Kurt Bardella and Chris Hahn, and Scott Bolden, a NewsNation political analyst and former chair of the D.C. Democratic Party. Hello to all of you. Great to have all of you with us. I want to get, first of all, we just got in the last few minutes news that yet another Democratic congressman has joined in calling publicly for President Biden to step aside. It's Congresswoman Marie Perez of Washington. She writes, quote, I've spent the last 2 weeks listening to my constituents express their concerns. I doubt the president's judgment on his health, his fitness to do the job, and whether he is the one making important decisions about our country rather than unelected advisors. Ouch. Scott, why don't you start?
Well, you got 14 out of 435. That's not exactly a groundswell. Most of these congresspersons are in challenging districts. I get it. They're listening to their constituencies, and they're trying to protect their political flank. At the same time, many of these concerns are about governing. Joe Biden demonstrated he can govern. The question for Democrats right now, maybe even the media, maybe even the GOP, is can Donald Trump run, win, and prosecute the case against Donald Trump? That's what the debate was all about. And he wasn't able to counterpunch. He wasn't able to really bring it home. And that's really what Dems are concerned about. That being said, I think his age issue is baked into the numbers already, just like Trump's corruption and chaos issue is baked in. That's why the numbers haven't moved that much. And so regardless of how he performs on this unscripted press conference, I certainly hope he does well. But at worst, it's going to be confirmation that, yes, age is an issue, but how do you get the voters in America to vote against experience as opposed to chaos and corruption?
I want Kurt and Chris to weigh in on this. Guys, I was really struck. Every other congressman has come out, and the one senator has come out and said, and a lieutenant governor of the state of New York has come out and said, you know, all these glowing things about President Biden and saying it's time for him to pass the torch and step aside. This statement out just now is quite harsh, saying, I doubt that he has the judgment to do this job and that he's the one making important decisions and not a group of unelected advisors. Kurt, you first, then Chris.
Well, finally, we have a Democrat who's actually saying out loud what everybody's actually saying behind the scenes and privately to one another on every text thread, every conversation I have had with Democrat Party strategists, with fellow political advisors, with elected officials, with members of Congress, with diehard, ardent supporters of Joe Biden. They're saying exactly what this congresswoman has said. And it's unfortunate that it's gotten to the point where some of these things, maybe they need to be said out loud. Maybe the kid glove approach isn't going to work to get the president to kind of do that hard self-assessment, look in the mirror, and make the decision to step aside. I think a lot of Democrats held their fire this week because of the NATO conference. And as that's coming to a close, I think you're going to see a lot more than 14 Democrats step forward publicly and start calling on the president to step aside.
Do you agree, Chris?
Yeah, here's what you're seeing right now. You're seeing a slow drip. And in a crisis, it's the drip, drip, drip that kills you, never the original sin. And what's happening right now is every couple of hours, another member of Congress in a frontline district is coming out and saying, time for the president to step aside. I think the congresswoman you just mentioned is in one of the most difficult districts in the country. She's without a doubt hearing it from her constituents. She probably was hearing it before his bad debate performance. I don't know what's going to happen tonight. I don't think he's going to give an A-plus performance at his press conference tonight. I hope he does well. I don't want to see the president embarrassed. But I agree with what Kurt said. I agree what everybody's been saying. It is time for the president to face reality, that we are up against an existential threat in Donald Trump. I think the New York Times piece is a great read. I think every undecided voter should read it. And if President Biden truly believes that, he needs to get somebody in there who can make that case against him vigorously, whether it's the vice president or somebody else, because it is very important that the message is being carried. And look, while 74% after the debate said that Joe Biden shouldn't run, 54% said Donald Trump shouldn't run. He had the second worst debate performance of all time. Unfortunately, it was drowned out by the worst debate performance of all time. And the American people want a different choice. And if the Democratic Party gives them a different choice, that person's going to shoot to the top of the polls. I know that there's all sorts of polling floating around about Kamala Harris and others. Whoever the Democratic Party picks at their convention in Chicago is going to shoot to the top of the polls.
Scott, do you think that they can put the toothpaste back in the tube at this point? I mean, it does feel like it doesn't matter if Joe Biden hit it out of the park in about an hour from now at this press conference. I don't see, and yes, you're right to your point. There's more than 400 members of Congress who are Democrats in both houses of Congress. This is just a handful, but it's a handful, and there are a lot more of them saying this kind of thing behind closed doors.
Yeah, I'm still watching the drip from Chris Hahn, and I think he's right. There's a lot of drip. Feels like a death watch, if you will.
Yeah, it seems orchestrated, doesn't it, Scott? Doesn't it seem orchestrated?
It does, but
it's almost as if somebody's planning it.
Listen, here's the problem, or the challenge, right? And maybe all of you all could weigh in. We've got no leverage. The Democratic Party has no leverage to force him out. He's got $240 million. It's got to be his decision.
Yeah.
And then she moves up. Kamala moves up, and she picks a vice president, and she's the most likely choice because that $250 million doesn't have to move. So what is it going to get? What is it going to take to get him to step down? You're asking a lot of a significant president, one, of a sitting president, but secondly, watch this. If we're all right about this, how come the polling hasn't moved significantly for either one? We know Trump can't grow, Biden can grow, but the polling hasn't moved. Explain that to me.
Yeah. Listen,
Scott,
we're out of time, guys.
This election.
We'll have you back on. I promise, Chris.
Next time, Chris.
Next time. Very quickly as we go, one word answer from each of you. Is Biden going to be on the ticket come November? Yes or no?
No.
No. No, he will not.
I'm a lawyer. I don't know. Forgive me.
Two no's and an
$1.
I don't know.
I'm a lawyer, and I know.
All right, Kurt Bardella, Chris Hahn, A. Scott Bolden, thank you all so much. We will have you back. Really appreciate your insight.
Thank
you. All right,
you.
coming up for us.